be hot.
Good afternoon. I call to order the June 21st, 2022 Loudoun County Board of Supervisors Ad Hoc Committee on Advisory Boards, Commissions, and Committee meeting. This room has a hearing loop. If you need hearing assistance, switch your hearing aids to telecoil mode. If you need a headset, we have those available as well. Please see the clerk to request one. So, committee members, what I'd like to do is just have like a round of questioning. If there's any loose ends that you want tied up or clarified, I think we're good to go with the motion, but I just wanted to give ourselves an opportunity to ask staff any last questions. I have a couple little questions and clarifications, and then we'll just go to the motion.
So I either have 2 questions or 7 questions, depending on the answer to the first question. Thank you, Madam Chair. So my first question is it possible for every commission or committee that is appropriate that we have a clause in there that says that we should have a former customer to be on that committee? So in other words, if it's family services, somebody who has been a customer of the family services department. If it's CCJB, that's the reentry question is already there for reentry, but not for the whole CCJB. Can there be somebody who's been just as involved in that? So on every committee, can one of the positions be somebody? And it could be it's very possible that the position will double as the position that meets that area, but also someone who has been involved in receiving services. I've said this, but I've said it kind of committee to committee, and then I just thought, what am I doing? So CSB, that's an appropriate, it would be appropriate. CCJB, it would be appropriate. DSB, it would be appropriate. Housing committee, it might be appropriate. So most of them would be the behavioral services committees, but that might be an appropriate thing to have someone who has received the services of the department.
Yes, but there's variation and diversity to the function of each advisory group.
Yep.
So you'd have to tailor the statement. For example, Disability Services Board, from what agency are they receiving services?
So and the DSB board is probably a bad example because the DSB board is full of people who are receiving services. That's the one board that does that really, really well already. Yeah. I think the board that doesn't do it very well is probably CCJB, inmate SADS, or community service. So it wouldn't matter from what agency, as long as they are receiving services. It's all that I would care about.
I think the way we could handle it, Chair Randall and Committee Chairperson, is to we have a draft template of bylaws, and so we could do our best to come up with a statement to add to that draft template regarding a membership category for each advisory committee that receives related services to the topic area that the advisory group is. Some wording like that.
And it can double. I mean, so you can have a person from, it can double. The person can serve 2 roles at one time. My next question is, so I guess I do have 3 questions, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Okay. Is what is our ability to put out a report from our committees? Let's change that. If the committees put out a report, what is our ability to put out a report in multiple languages, or at least the first 3 languages spoken in the county?
I'd have to check.
Okay. And then my very last question, and I'm just doing this is just you guys have answered this. I'm going to ask it one more time just to cover myself because I'm not going through that again. The Lyme Disease Commission, they are fine with being usurped under the Health Commission at this point. We've checked with them, and they've said they're good with that. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, because last time when I brought this up,
they're good with it.
Okay, then I'll vote for it. Those are my 3 questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So, Mr. Yed, on I feel like the languages thing may be something that we can take up with perhaps with Mr. Barber's office
Yeah, we would look into it.
Okay.
The way that we have the recommendations of the committee structured is that we are expecting an annual report or a regular report from these advisory bodies to be made available. So if I understand Chair Randall's intention, once that annual report is prepared, what's the possibility of releasing that in a couple primary languages?
Yeah.
And so we would have to speak to Public Affairs and Communication about that.
Okay.
And so for the item coming to the board after today's work of the Ad Hoc Committee, we would include that the Ad Hoc Committee requested that staff look into the possibility of the regular reports by the advisory committees to be prepared in different languages.
Does that need to be in the motion today?
I think we could take that as committee direction if you're okay with it.
Okay, that's fine.
And then we'd give you the analysis of it and the how-to in the final report coming to the board.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I could, it doesn't have to be in every language. It may be the 3 primary languages spoken in Loudoun County would be very helpful, which I think after English, I think it's Spanish, I think it's Korean next. I think. I'm almost sure that's what's the next one. But yeah.
But our website has a way to translate.
That's what I thought too.
There are ways to translate, so we
But
would.
the question is, do the items that show up in PDF, are they translated? Because sometimes our committee reports would be in.
Mr. Barber's here. He might be able to answer the question.
Yeah. No. And our items are in PDF formed, so are those translated automatically?
We
our-
would,
You
as
can
far as
look
I
at-
know, this
okay.
is the first time that's
Okay.
come up.
Okay.
That
You can let
particular
us know.
question in this venue, so we'll check with
Sorry.
Public Affairs and give you a response.
Thank you.
It's like, don't call me up, don't call me up.
Excuse me. Let's go to you while I stop coughing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could staff please explain how the General Assembly bill coming into effect on September 1st regarding remote participation in meetings might play into our advisory bodies?
Yeah, we have been evaluating that and reporting out to the board about the impact of HB 444, which was approved and signed off by the governor, and as you said, will become effective September 1st. It does outline how electronic meetings can be held outside of a state of emergency, and whereas within a state of emergency, the ability to conduct virtual meetings was more prevalent. And I think we do list in the staff report how some groups would like to continue to take advantage of that virtual format. At this point, we are reviewing the legislation to determine the applicability to exactly which advisory boards, commissions, et cetera, it could apply to. At this point, we see that there are limitations on the number of times per calendar year or percentage of total meetings held per year that they would be limited to for the virtual format. But we are reviewing that and we'll include discussion on it in the wrap-up item from the 22 session. And at this point, we have a recommendation for a standardized template for bylaws, and we think as appropriate, we would address it there once those determinations are made.
Okay. My second question is, I'm wondering if a section of the draft bylaws could be updated and clarified. In Section 2B, and I think that's, I forgot, on page 46 in the packet, under Article 2 membership, and describes the process of moving an advisory body member for lack of attendance. During my time as the liaison to the DSB, I've seen this in process try to be undertaken, and it doesn't prove easy. It takes up to 6 months with all the back and forth with 3 missed meetings, reaching out to the supervisors and the committee chairs, and having the committee vote and then the board vote, all while during that time the committee is having trouble reaching quorum. I'm wondering if this process should be adjusted or streamlined to make it quicker and easier to remove an inactive member?
Okay, I'm going to ask one of our county attorney staff members who are with us virtually to comment on that, because they have spent some time based on the earlier discussion from the Ad Hoc Committee on how to treat that. And so I don't know if Mr. Sherwood or Ms. Sidnor would like to respond to that.
Sorry, this is John Sherwood. There's Courtney. We just needed to unmute for a second. So if I understand the question, you're asking whether or not we can streamline the articulated process for removing somebody for poor attendance, or in some areas of the code, that's referred to as nonfeasance. Yeah, literally doing nothing. And so the code doesn't specify the exact process that needs to be followed. However, there typically needs to be some articulated process where the person who is subject to the removal process has an opportunity to respond to the charge that they have not been attending, and then have an opportunity to offer, kind of a defense of what's happened as a way prior to removal from the appointment. That does not mean that the decision can then not go through, but you can't have it be too quick that the person doesn't reasonably have an opportunity to respond or potentially even correct their behavior.
So, Supervisor Glass, if I can just add on to that very briefly, and sorry if you guys are getting a feedback from me. I think, and I didn't catch the page number you said you were referencing, but I think what we put in was 3 meetings or more.
Thank you,
and I
Shalom.
think looking through I'm sorry?
Sorry, go ahead. Oop, now she's muted.
No, you're muted, Ms. Sidney.
Oh, now you're muted, Sydney. Sorry. Courtney. Sorry, Sidnor.
I still can't hear you.
I think somebody probably muted her.
I'm on.
Okay, there you are.
There you are. Go.
Yep, no, she's gone again. Ms. Sidnor.
Nope, can't hear you.
Somebody else muting her, because there's no way Ms. Sidnor is muting herself. There's just no way she's doing that.
Yeah, nobody's muting her. I know that the volume was turned down a little bit, which was nice, but then now she's muted.
Very smart woman that would not mute herself.
She would not mute herself. Nope.
Ms. Brisman, while we're trying to solve
Yeah.
that audio issue,
Yes, sir.
in order to address Ms. Glass's concern, the language that shows up in B4 is newly created, and it describes the conditions under which someone can be removed. And I guess what we would need is just a little bit more clarification. If you're asking for a streamlined process, does it have to be in the template, or what exactly would you be looking for if it's something beyond those words as written?
I think it seems like, okay, it can take up to 6 months, but that is if everything goes, in order and we don't have any issues, because then that's 3 months of the person not at the meeting, and then that means we have to, then that's 1 month of, going to the supervisor or whoever, the person in charge, and then speaking to that person, and then going back to the committee, and then, if the decision is that we take it to the board and then that's at a meeting, so that's about 6 months. So that is a it's a lot of time for a committee not to have quorum if that person is, part of the issue where they're not meeting. So I was just trying to see what
Hi,
can
Courtney.
be done.
So I think go ahead and explain, if you wouldn't mind, what you were trying to say a second ago.
Okay, and I apologize for that.
It's okay.
What I was saying is I think in the bylaws, what it says is 3 meetings. And in looking at the code, for those committees that specify a number, 3 is kind of consistent. So I think that's what we picked as the baseline to be consistent with all of them. So, and the goal here was to have, excuse me, I'm a little out of breath, was to have consistent policies throughout the committees. And so I think that's why it was at 3. John did that legwork, so he can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was my understanding. So if you wanted to change it, we would probably be in a situation where we would have different rules for different bodies.
Okay.
I had a feeling we might be a little stuck with that, but the good news is that we are giving ourselves more flexibility for not following code of conduct and those sorts of things. But it sounds like we might be getting into a little bit of murky water legally if we try to not give folks a chance to respond, and that if we apply that attendance policy differently than we are in other places. I do agree with you, though, that it gets to be a long process when we have to think about removing somebody. And the other one thing that might help, though, is if we make sure that the chairs of our advisory bodies, commissions, and boards have a clear understanding of the process. And there was one committee chair I was speaking to last week who didn't really understand the process. So, and I know that staff works really hard to make sure they understand the process, but I still think some committee and advisory body chairs maybe don't understand the process, and they might let a couple meetings go before they even start to think about the removal process. So I'm not quite sure where we could change language or ensure that committee chairs are well versed on that process.
Right. I think also there wasn't necessarily a clear process before. So now if there is one and you socialize it, you can see, hopefully it won't come up all the time, but you try this, and if it is not working, we could adjust the language. But I think the fact that you have a process now should probably help.
Okay.
I agree, yeah.
I'll accept that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, this standardized bylaws is new, right? So we had some committees that had a 1-page Word document for their bylaws. So I think we're making a lot of strides to hopefully people that will understand it. Okay. Are you good? Yes. Okay, excellent. I did have a couple questions. Back to what the chair was asking, though, Mr. Yudd, do you think we need any amendments to our motions about adding a customer to committees that might be appropriate to have that seat? Or do you want it to come back when we come back to the full board?
You know what, I'm thinking that it's probably good to get that direction, and then
Okay.
we would do our best to write it up and put it into the template as best we could.
Okay, so we are giving you direction. Do you need it in
Yes.
a motion? Okay,
No.
okay, no motion. Okay, perfect. I did have a couple questions now that I've got my papers. Here we go. And hopefully this won't be too long and we can go to a motion. One of the recommendations is to send committee commissions information through standing committees, which I really like. REDC would then go to finance, is my understanding,
Correct.
along with Buddy's group.
Correct.
Perfect. What was this? Committee members, I just wanted to make sure that you had a full understanding of the new membership for REDC, which is on page 13, and that you're good with that. And we did discuss that with Ms. Fultman, and she is good with that. You guys okay with that?
So I am. I first of all, I really do appreciate Ms. Boltman coming in, and both the chair and the vice chair of REDC came in. I do think that there's still some tension with REDC and to be worked out and worked through. But I'm also very convinced that everyone is coming to the table with the best of intentions, and really the intention is to, make sure that REDC is focused on the issue of growing the rural economy or supporting the rural economy, understanding that land issues and our rural economy go hand in hand. But in the end, the focus is the economy, and that there are times when certain staff need to be at certain meetings and times when they don't need to be there because it's just not helpful. So these were, I think, difficult discussions, and that happens. I also, Ms. Boltman did a really good job kind of explaining some of the history that I either didn't know or had forgotten, and so that was really helpful for her. I do want to say, after we do this, I would like Ms. Boltman or whomever is chair and vice chair of the RADC to keep us apprised of how it feels, how it's going, if it feels like it's not enough, if it's too much, what's going on, because the truth is, no one on this subcommittee, on this ad hoc committee, lives in the West. I represent the West, but I'm not as versed in those issues as some other people might be. And so we do want to hear the voice of our Western, not that the voice of the Western Loudon doesn't come through loud and clear and often. I'm not going to say that because they do talk to us pretty often, but we just want to make sure that we continue to listen to that voice. And so if any from RADC is listening to us, Ms. Boltman, the vice chair, anybody else, please know that this is a conversation we want to keep having with you, and that we really do appreciate you, I think, now coming in 3 times to have these discussions. So that would be all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am very happy with the recommended mission and work plan for REDC, and I did go over that with Ms. Boltman as well. Did you have something, Charles?
Yes. Committee Chairperson, if the body today is okay with the language, the membership cluster language that's on page 13, then when we get to the motion, we're going to just recommend that you state as amended today, because that would address the info on
Which
page
letter is that?
That's I.
As amended today. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent. On page 18, standardized bylaws allows for advisory bodies to modify. Would that be sort of an administrative thing, or would advisory bodies have to come back to the board to modify the standardized bylaws?
They're coming back to the board.
Okay. Can non-voting members attend meetings remotely? I'm referring to page 19. Can non-voting members attend meetings remotely without getting explicit permission, since they do not vote and they do not impact quorum?
So if I understand your question correctly, I would say that the remote participation policy, as we're familiar with and is articulated in the board has such a policy, and most of the advisory bodies have one, would not apply to those non-voting members for the reason you said, because they don't impact quorum and they're not voting. So I think then it's up to them, each body, to have a procedure, or if you want to include something in your standardized procedures for a non-voting seat or representative to be able to participate remotely, similar to the way perhaps staff might be able to do so. So I think it would not be stated in the context of the remote participation policy, but just your provision for participation by staff or other non-voting representatives.
How much of if we put that in there, that non-voting members can attend remotely without getting explicit permission, I'm thinking this through, and staff would still probably have to set things up so somebody could attend remotely. So how much of a wrench does that throw in the works for staff? Would it be adding a lot of staff work if we were to say non-voting members can participate remotely without asking for explicit permission? Someone would probably have to still be notified so that they could attend remotely. So
I think they still have to make arrangements to do so, and that's why I was saying you have the procedures for how you go about logistically making that work.
Okay.
But in terms of the remote participation policy with that, county attorney's office has to review this to make sure it's consistent with the policy and the code. The chair who's presiding over the meeting has to make an announcement at the start of the meeting. All of those things, that part of it wouldn't apply to those non-voting participants. It would just be a matter of making the arrangements, however that is. I mean, certainly someone couldn't show up. I mean, you kind of have to know that someone's going to want to do that, right? So
yeah, exactly.
So I that's why I was saying I think the provision for that would be outside of that remote participation policy for members, if that makes sense.
Okay. So in order for non-voting advisory folks to attend remotely without asking permission, Mr. Yudd, do you think we need something in the bylaws templates to allow for that?
No.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay, then. Do we need to say that in the bylaws anywhere, that non-voting advisory people can attend remotely without it?
You know what might be more helpful to the committee at this point in time, based on what Supervisor Briskman was inquiring about earlier, and the impact of HB 444, which we're evaluating, that has to be looked at in totality.
Okay,
So that
we can bring
more
it back
guidance
then.
can be given. And should that affect the bylaws, then we would so note that. We would
tweak it. Okay, great. So we don't need to do it in this
To
body.
the larger area of what Ms. Sidnor is talking about is just the applicability of a non-voting member in general. If they're not part of the policy making or decision making of the public body, then that also is a factor. So I don't think we need an amendment at this time, and I would say the larger discussion of the ability to have more remote meetings based on the new legislation will be a factor.
Okay, phenomenal. I'm going to skip my next question because I think we all understand why we're adjusting the rules of order to accomplish our goals here. So the last thing is, one thing I noticed missing from our bylaws templates was any statement that kind of matches our county vision and board vision of being an equitable and inclusive county. So I feel like we probably need a statement in our bylaws, bylaws templates to that effect. And I'm not quite sure where we could put that. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, this is interesting because Chair Randall may recall from the work of the Ad Hoc Committee during the last board's term, the board directed us to include a statement at the location where applicants are considering submitting for nomination. And so that statement says, the Board of Supervisors recognizes and celebrates the diversity of Loudoun County and encourages all individuals to apply and serve on board-appointed committees and commissions. So we've had that statement, and so the question would be: do you feel that's adequate now, 4 years later, 4 or 5 years later, or are you looking for it to go into to a bylaw? And if you were, then something like that could be.
I would like to see something like that in the bylaws, only because we have a couple times where there's the process of the actual committee recommending and deciding who gets appointed, not just the Board of Supervisors, if that makes sense. So, well, FSAB just asked for it. We do still have to approve them.
Correct. And they're I think, to get to your point, if I may respond to that, is
Please.
maybe some committees get more of a preview of potential nominees or a slate of nominees. But having a statement like that in general could be included. It's just, it might be difficult for the groups to actually implement.
Okay. All right, well, we'll leave it for now then. Okay. My last question was timing. So we're going to do this motion. I don't think I saw that it's being directed to a specific date for a board meeting. So we'll do this motion, and I'm just wondering when you think it might come to the full board, and then how long we think it might take for some of the committees to adopt the bylaws and change things.
Second question first, it's going to be a rolling process throughout the upcoming year.
Okay.
So it will take a bit of time.
Okay.
And then first question, I believe you may be interested in one July meeting, in a certain July meeting due to schedule conflict.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure what that, we do not say it in the motion. So if you are interested in going to the second business meeting in July, the first, you can make that you could add that.
I mean, I'm okay with it going to the first meeting in July or waiting till September. I don't want to overburden staff and make it happen in the first meeting in July.
Okay, could I ask a couple questions about that? Because
Yes.
we need to follow up on the member as being a recipient of services, as
Yes.
discussed a moment
gonna
ago.
take a
That'll
little
take a little
research.
bit of follow-up to determine the best language or the best recommended language that staff has for ultimately the board on that. The issue of the annual reports or the regular reports from committees being available in different languages, I think that can be accommodated, and so that's not going to take a lot of work for us to form a response to you. And so I think those are the only really two additional items that we're following up from today. So I think we could turn around for the 5th.
You sure?
Do you think we can? That's ongoing. Lisa's asking me about the legislation, and that would be ongoing beyond the
Okay.
we would continue to look at and address beyond the board action on the ad hoc recommendations.
Let's do this. We'll just say that we're giving direction for it to be the 5th. I don't want to put it in the motion necessarily, but we'll just give direction for it to come to the 5th, because I don't know, the chair probably has more of an idea of what's coming up on the 5th than I do.
It's a very light agenda.
Oh, the 5th is light. Okay, let's go for the 5th, if it's light.
Okay, and then I did have one other item before your motion, before
Yes,
you move to
sir.
motion. In the discussion on the Housing Advisory Board, and that is,
I feel like the 5th
I want to tell you what page it's on. Which one? 11. If you look at 11 in the packet and on your iPad,
Do you want to give me a page number? Because I feel like we have a lot of 11s.
11 on the iPad?
Number 11 or page 11?
page 11.
Oh, page 11, okay. I can go to page 11.
Bottom of page 11 is the discussion of the ad hoc committee's recommendation regarding HAB. And we did hear from staff from Housing Community Development, just to make it clear that the staff is preparing the quarterly report with input from the HAB, but the HAB isn't expected to prepare that report. Staff is usually the ones to do that work. And then they would come quarterly to TLUC with a report. So we just wanted to make that clarification. It seemed to go without saying, but to be overly communicative, we wanted to include that.
Right, so don't be surprised if this recommendation doesn't come the first quarterly report, is what you're saying.
And that it's prepared by staff.
Okay.
And just the wording and the discussion in that section, the staff wanted to make sure that HAB wasn't being asked to prepare it. They're providing, obviously, input
Yes.
on it.
Yes, of course.
Minor clarification.
Yeah. And actually, so I apologize, one more question. So we are reducing the membership on several of our committees, boards, and commissions. Do you think that will happen in the next term, or
It's
will it
subject
depend?
to the vacancy and nomination process.
Okay,
So it's more of an attrition, I guess, would be a way to describe it.
perfect. Okay,
That is all of the staff commentary I have, right? Okay, thank you.
excellent. All right. Let's go to a motion, and it's very, very long. So here we go. I move that the Ad Hoc Committee on Advisory Boards, Commissions, and Committees recommend to the Board of Supervisors, A, adopt an amendment to the Board of Supervisors Rules of Order provided as Attachment 1 to the June 21, 2022 action item to require that each advisory body provide a report of its work efforts to the full board on a regular basis as stipulated in bylaws documents. B, adopt amendments to the Board of Supervisors policies and procedures provided as Attachment 2 to the June 21, 2022 action item to reflect updated procedures and to add code of conduct, code of ethics specific to advisory board members to support the language in the bylaws template regarding the removal of advisory body members. C, approve the standardized bylaws templates provided as attachment 3 to the June 21st, 2022 action item and direct staff to distribute the template to each advisory body, commission, and committee for amendment according to the process identified in the June 21st, 2022 Ad Hoc Committee action item beginning in the FY 2023, and that staff present the updated bylaws to the Board of Supervisors for approval by June 30th, 2023.
Hold on that. What is the June 30th date?
Now you got to start over.
No, I don't. D, direct the county administrator to begin the 4 short-term arts projects identified by staff to include temporary staff to support the projects, and that county administrator be directed to contract for the development of a countywide arts plan and bring back recommendations regarding budget needs to the plan to the FY 2024 budget process. E, direct the Art Advisory Committee or successor advisory body to add to its permanent collection and provide stewardship of the Board of Supervisors portraits located on the 1st and 5th floors of the Government Center, and to include into its plan for curation the county art collection and the establishment of satellite exhibit spaces. F, direct the Family Services Advisory Board to amend the standard advisory body membership application to include questions specific to the mission and goals of the FSAB and requirements for being an active and effective advisory board member. G, direct staff to implement changes for the Housing Advisory Board as described in the June 21, 2022 action item. H, direct the Disability Services Board to reduce their membership to 11 members. I, direct the Rural Economic Development Council to implement changes to the bylaws as described in the June 21, 2022 action item as amended today. J, dissolve the Lime Commission as it currently exists and direct that record of the LDC's achievements and its current programmatic function be absorbed by the Loudon Health Commission, and that funding dedicated to the LDC be for outreach purposes be maintained with the health department's budget. K, direct that the stipend for each Board of Equalization member be increased from $15 per meeting hearing hour to $200 per BOE meeting hearing attended effective July 1st, 2022, or FY 23.
Second.
Thank you. So I am extremely proud of our work. I believe the work here will result in more efficient use of our advisory bodies and more align them with the goals of our board, as well as hopefully reduce staff time on some committee committees and boards. We've made adjustments to have a more robust arts council and effort in the county with short-term and long-term goals in the arts. I couldn't be more excited about that. We are eliminating one committee that has fulfilled its charter and mission, and we're reducing membership of at least 2 committees while allowing an enhanced application process for the FSAB. We are aligning our Housing Advisory Board with our Unmet Housing Needs Strategic Plan, and we will reduce the number of times the HAB meets, hopefully reducing staff time in that committee. And it will be reporting to TLUC on their analysis of our success with the Unmet Housing Needs Strategic Plan. We are improving pay for the Board of Equalization. We are recommending changes to the RADC so that it can achieve quorum and focus its efforts solely on economic development and less on land use issues. And lastly, we are requiring a set of bylaws that allow more flexibility for supervisors to remove members they have appointed who are violating our codes of ethics, and we are setting a ground floor set of rules for all of our county-created committees, boards, and commissions. We are allowing committee and board members to only serve on a total of 2 advisory bodies as well, which will hopefully bring new voices into the conversation on policy in our county. I'm really thankful to the committee members who joined me in this effort, and thank you so much for staff for all of your effort. Thank you. Do you have any comments, committee members? Go ahead. Supervisor Glass.
Thank you. I first want to give all the staff a huge thank you for your incredible work during this process. Mr. Yudd and Ms. Erickson, you have been extremely helpful answering questions and brainstorming ideas on how to better utilize our advisory bodies and serve the citizens of Loudoun County. I also want to thank the advisory body staff, liaisons, and department heads for their assistance in the process as well. And of course, thank the chairs of the advisory bodies for their participation. Without their input, we would not have many of the great recommendations coming out of this committee. I want to highlight a few of the recommendations that we're sending to the full board. The first is the disbandment of the Lyme Disease Commission and the absorption of the committee's mission to the Loudon Health Commission. Lyme disease is certainly not gone and is still prevalent in Loudon. That being said, through the commission's tireless efforts, the last decade of laying a good foundation, their workload can now be completed through the Health Commission. I know Lyme disease will continue to be a focus of that group, and thank the leadership of the Lyme Disease Commission for their service to the county. The increased stipends for the Board of Equalization members are also something I'm very proud we are recommending. When the chair of the BOE and a Broad Run resident, Mr. Kruger, came to me and explained how much work they had put in and how little they were being paid, it became obvious to me that their stipends need to be increased. The recommended stipend increases bring out BOE compensation up to par with our neighboring jurisdictions. And the preservation of the old board photos and the implementation of the arts plan will be a game changer for Loudoun County. Highlighting the arts will be one of the most beneficial things we can do to bring accessible cultural programs throughout Loudoun. Chair Briskman, thank you for leading us through this effort, and those are my comments.
Thank you, Supervisor Glass. Madam Chair.
I would associate myself with Mr. Supervisor Glass's comments. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Supervisor Chair Briskman, and that is all. Thank you.
All right. We have a motion on the table, seconded by Chair Randall. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. Mr. Yudd?
Thank you. On page 5 of the staff report, there was an additional potential recommendation on the Community Criminal Justice Board regarding the membership to that board and directing staff to research membership with other CCJBs in the Commonwealth and in consultation with Virginia Department of Criminal Justice. And so if you wish to go ahead and make that motion, it was an additional motion based on
an
the
additional motion on that one? That was an additional motion on
I didn't
that?
see that one.
Well, it was a potential, not a additional motion, but additional recommendation.
Madam Chair, Mr. Yett, you don't think that the guidance we just gave to have a consumer that would cover that?
It could, just making sure that
Because that was a discussion around reentry, right?
it was.
It was a discussion around reentry. Well, maybe it doesn't, because those actually are two different things. So does that need a motion?
If you wish to direct staff to do that research specifically for CCJB membership, there was a lot of discussion in the staff report that we provided.
Yeah.
And I believe we have Mr. Sullivan still online.
Mr. Sullivan, are you still online? I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
That's okay. Go ahead, Mr. Sullivan, are you online?
Hi, good afternoon. I am.
Can I ask you?
Go ahead, Madam Chair.
Mr. Sullivan, I actually believe this is still a good idea to do this. Do you have any opinion on that? Because I can just have Mr. Yudd repeat his words and go so moved on that motion. Do you have any ideas on that? And Mr. Sullivan, having worked in this field for such a long time, for me, I don't really believe most people understand what it is to come out of an incarcerated setting and try to kind of get your life back together, and how the roadblocks you run into and how difficult that might be, and how, it's a lot more difficult task than people realize. And so that's why I thought, but I'd like your opinion, sir.
I certainly see that value there. I would agree with you. I think one question that I would have is would that person be currently on supervision with our office?
I think they can be on or off papers. I think they can be on or off papers. I would say they should probably be off papers for at least, out of the incarcerated setting for at least a year. Even if they're still on papers, I think they need to be at least a year out, because I don't think that you can really, I think that first year, you're just trying to figure things out. And so I would, because you can be on papers for a very long time, right, and still have something to offer. But I do think they should be 1 year post-incarceration, even if they're still on papers.
Okay, and I certainly don't have any problem conducting research consistent with that recommendation.
Okay. Then I forgot the wording, Mr. Yudd just said. If you want to repeat it, I would just.
It's on page 5, and I can read it again. The Ad Hoc Committee recommends that the board direct staff to research the membership of other CCJBs in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and in consultation with the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice and Loudoun County's metrics related to criminal justice, to determine the types of additional membership seats, if any, it should recommend to the board via a resolution.
I'd like to so move that, Madam Chair.
Second.
Okay. I think we've said all we have to say. I've worked with, I don't know how many people who are post-incarceration, and what normally happens is the first month they're walking on air and things are great, and then the second month they're trying to figure out getting a job, and by the third month, like, life sets in, and it really gets difficult, and they have to start living by society's rules in a different way, and it becomes. I think it's just a lot harder than people realize, and so I do believe that voice would be really, really important on that committee. I think that Ms. Sullivan, it was a great question. Should they still be, on probation or not? But, you can. You can be on supervised probation and then on unsupervised probation for 10 years, for gracious sake. You really can, and so I don't think that matters as much as them just being post-incarceration for 1 year, having gone through every holiday. How does that feel being out? Every birthday, how does that feel being out? And all. So I think that's why I would say 1 year post, but still on papers is reasonable. So, okay,
Excellent.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have a motion by Chair Randall, seconded by myself. Any further discussion, Supervisor Glass? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Yudd, for reminding us of that. And I think with that, do I need to say anything to disband the committee? Is that anything?
You can.
Okay. Well, Actually, I'm not going to disband it yet because you guys need to do a little bit more work. So for now, I will adjourn this committee and look forward to July 5th, hopefully, if not early September. And thank you again for all of your work. I call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.